Hello fellow humans and welcome to how to play a rear turret tank and how to deal with bad leopard players, I suppose, just right there. Now the FE215B is quite the beast, 3200 alpha damage. It does have Hesh as well, so you can even increase your alpha damage that way. 400 regularly though, 0.3 accuracy, 7 degrees of gun depression. It's not that amazing, but it still works. Mobility, could be better, and armor, that is pretty solid. But the problem is with the FE215B that it is going to get turned upside down in one of the next updates, because the adjustments to this vehicle, I don't understand them. It gets faster, but it gets less armor. For a vehicle that is essentially a stationary brawler, which is what it's good at, that is quite disappointing there. It's a very quite disappointing change, but nonetheless. Now this is the regular Octopus camo as well. You can get the Octopus X by doing a mission, or by having wasted a lot of time a couple of months ago. But that doesn't matter. So, the FE215B is a very good vehicle, except for that one thing. And that is the turret is mounted at the rear, which can be pretty damn tricky, because every time you try to peek around a corner, you have to send your engine first, and your fuel tank, because the fuel tank of this vehicle is built right behind the front plate. So, every shot that gets at you, you can be set on fire very easily now. I don't know what the enemy team is doing here. They're not really taking any map control. This is a very good situation here for Applehead Fighter, which, I mean, they're just throwing at this point. There's no ways to say about it, because a excellent game pretty much always requires incompetent enemies, and there is an abundance of them in Blitz. Now, the rear turret does pose the problem of that you have to now play around it, in a vehicle like the Chrysler K, which is or was in the auction, still has that same problem as well. You have to fight around the rear turret. Now, in something like a Chrysler K, you can side scrape very well because the side is flat. The problem with the FE215B is you can't do that because the turret is wider than, like, the turret ring is wider than the side of the hull, which means right below the turret ring, there is a spot where you can be pinned right there when you're side scraping, which is kind of not great, so that doesn't work. Now, ideally, you don't want to go city in any vehicle, so there's that, but vehicles like the Chrysler K or the VK90 are excellent at side scraping, and you can play them there. Now this vehicle, not so much. Now the yaw, I have no idea what he's doing. I mean, he's less of an applehead, more like a bonehead. So, well, here's the thing. First of all, amazing awareness there, realizing the Hori's coming up the back and shooting him in the rear, and then turning around, dealing with the Hori. This is great player awareness right here, and that is what you need to be an excellent player at this game. The awareness, look at the enemy map, you have to know what's going on around you, especially with a vehicle with a turret at the rear, because you have to pay more attention to what's in front of you, what's behind you, because you can't peek forward very quickly. You essentially have to turn around. Now, the Jagdpanzer is trying the good old move of kissy kissy huggy huggy, but it doesn't really work out because he now has his gun up in the air, and he's going to get wrecked from the side. So, congratulations on that very intelligent move. And that is great. Benefiting of bad players is what good players do. That's how good players play well, for the most part. Because you just benefit off the mistakes of others, while nobody can punish yours. It's perfectly fine to make mistakes in this game. I make plenty, and you will see that later as well. It's just, if nobody can punish you for the mistakes that you're making, you will still get out on top every single time. And that's the same here with this Minotaur. Perfectly spotted. He's out in the open. He can't reverse into cover quickly enough. And now the FE215B, with the assistance of the hill, can get down there, get the speed, and now the Minotaur is thoroughly screwed because, you know, he doesn't have a fully traversable turret. He's incredibly slow, and then his rear is very heshable. Now he's done. This is just peak player awareness right here, and that's what you kind of want to have, because especially when your turret's at the rear, but in any vehicle, really, you want to have that player awareness to know the Hori's behind you. I can rush that Minotauro, and these are things that don't happen in 500 battles. These are things that happen in 5,000, 10,000, maybe 20,000 battles. So if you're a new player, don't worry. If you pay attention to what's happening around you, you will eventually get better. And that's the important part. You don't necessarily have to know everything about the vehicle. Like, you don't have to know what the 113's penetration is or whatever. But you have to know what he's doing. right? You have to know the player more than the tank, because the player makes the bigger difference than the tank. That is something that's very important as well. I mean, you ideally definitely want to know everything you can about the tank, because then you know what the player is capable of doing, obviously. But you have to understand the player. Always. Right? What are they doing? What are they doing? And with this vehicle, in a position like this, you can play it. This is my gameplay, by the way, which is why it's 10 times worse than the previous game. But yeah, got the turret armor. Look at that. It's got turret armor. So in a position like this, the rear turret doesn't really matter that much. You'll be perfectly fine. You'll be okay. But in a situation where you want to peek, you're going to be very careful. Now that E4, I mean, just turning out in the open, you know, you might as well. So ideally, use your brain. Stay within a couple of meters of covers that if someone attacks you, like I'm doing right here, like I'm a meter away from the rock. I shoot the FE205B 183 and I peek behind the rock. He can't do anything about it. Poof. That's how it goes. That's the magic. So at this point, I'm also using my hash because that's what makes this vehicle so good. How about Leo? I mean, what can I say? Peeking out in reverse while being a one-shot in front of FE215B, not really the greatest idea. Unless you know that the FE215B is incompetent, then you might as well do it because he's not going to hit you anyway. But don't get cocky. That's another very important thing. Don't get cocky. Play to your ability. Especially with a vehicle like this. On a ridgeline, this is where this vehicle works perfectly because you can hide the entirety of the hull. You don't have to worry about the turret being at the rear. And you can just use that hash to have some fun. And also, you have an E4 that doesn't know what's going on. That also helps. And now, there's a 183 and an E4. What I'm going to do here? Oh, what you're supposed to do. I'm just going to peek out. Look at that. I know that both of them can't punish me because I know what kind of players they are. So I'm just peeking out forward. It doesn't matter. And normally, what you want to do, what the correct course of action is here, just like I'm doing now, is set up a side scrape. But I didn't have to do that because I knew they won't be countering me. So the secret to the rear-turreted vehicle is just know the player, and if they're bad, fight them because you're gonna play well, and try to hide the front plate of the 215B especially because you can get set on fire very, very easily. With that said, hope this was in any way helpful. If it wasn't, tell me in the comments. See you in the next one. Goodbye.